Hello everybody, it's another day here in the frozen north. We can't actually do any fishing, probably for at least another few weeks, so we might as well talk about it a little bit. Now I get a lot of questions just from both casual and competitive anglers about fishing in the spring. And especially guys fishing in tournaments right around the pre-spawn, because, you know, let's face it, that's one of the best times to have events because you see big stringers, a lot of great fish caught. And I think all too often you see guys kind of get in ruts. Now, you know, I'm a firm believer that we're still kind of riding this wave that KVD created by blasting fish on square bills for 2 or 3 years in a row in the Bassmaster Classic and other spring events. You know, square bill sales are through the roof. They're a great tool. They can catch a pile of fish. But I think, you know, sometimes it drives anglers too shallow, and particularly too shallow too early. Because, you know, fish, even when they get to spawning phase, water temps get up, you know, fish spawn in waves, so there's still fish staging deeper, there's still fish slowly moving up, and a lot of times your bigger fish will either come up either before you know it, depending on what body of water you are, or they'll come up right at the end, or you know, a lot of times I've seen, you know, you go to bed and there's a buck there, there's a buck male there, another, you know, buck male day after day, and then all of a sudden that big female comes out of nowhere. Well, you know, most likely she's in the vicinity, right? She wants to get up there. She's just waiting on the water temp or a weather pattern or some little thing to change for her to move up. So a lot of times, you know, instead of focusing your efforts really shallow, I like to move out a little bit to that first drop, the first, you know, kind of spot where fish are going to stage because they want to move up. Whether it's the drop on a flat, maybe it's a funnel area, you know, anywhere around rock I like, because rock holds a lot of heat, and let's face it, you know, out of nowhere you can get a cold day in the spring that can move them right back out. And I think when I see anglers, a lot of times, you know, if you look at their crankbait selection, that kind of 6 to 12 or 14 foot range, you know, can be totally devoid, or, you know, it has a couple baits and they have, you know, seen no use whatsoever. So if you don't catch them shallow, you know, don't write your day off. Just move out a little bit, try a little deeper running bait, and see what happens. The first thing I'll say is, you know, if you can, try to get the best rod for the application. And when you're covering these long distances, you know, often on these long drops, you know, you're making long casts down edges, right? You want to try to parallel those edges a lot. You know, I'll throw some perpendicular too, but long casts, cover a lot of ground, find those fish. So I like a good 7 foot 6 inch rod. I know you can't see the whole thing, but this is 7.6. I want the right action, you know, big parabolic action, so when it loads up, I don't have to set the hook super hard, and those trebles are squarely set in the, you know, the mouth of the bass. I use a 6-4-1 cranking reel. I prefer the Revo SDX. I think bang for the buck, it's right up there. You know, some guys like a little faster or a little slower. This is my preference. You know, I also want a butt that's just long enough that I can get it back and locked kind of into my armpit if needed. Sometimes that'll help fight fish, help get a good hook set, you know, just make it a little easier. But, you know, in my opinion, a nice, you know, long rod, especially for kayak anglers, you know, maximize your distance, will go a long way when cranking medium depths, especially in the spring, because, you know, again, you're not throwing to little targets. You're not throwing to, you know, really small spots. You're gunning it and, you know, cranking and trying to get it, you know, maximize your efficiency while on the water. You know, here's a bunch of cranks. I know some are probably hard to see that kind of cover that medium range. You know, a lot of guys that know me and who I talk to a lot about this stuff know that I like to look for baits that are a little bit different. So among these cranks here in front of me, you know, a coupler balsa. You know, this is a balsa DB3 dredge. It's actually new in my box this year. I haven't yet to throw it. And one of those kind of old school baits. And the reason I love balsa, and I'm kind of infatuated with it, both shallow and deep, is the way it deflects is unlike any kind of mass-produced plastic crankbait. When it hits a rock, its action is just so much different. And I think when you're fishing in, you know, heavily pressured waters or around fish that might be seeing a bunch of guys on tournament day, something a little bit different can be all you need to stand out to a fish. So I usually like to look for something that's just a little bit different. This is another bait, of course, brand new in the box, is the medium size Little John DD. They call it the baby DD. I love the big ones. I've had great luck deep cranking them. The medium one's a much smaller profile, which really appeals to me now that I'm in the north and I'm catching a lot more smallmouth bass. But the fact that they're kind of covering that medium range, I love the flat sides. The rattle's a little bit different. It's a different sound. Again, just something that's a little different. Same goes for these two baits. One's a flat-sided balsa bait. The other one's a flat-sided plastic bait. But it's kind of got an interesting shape to the lip, if you can see that. It's like a pseudo coffin bill. It's got a crazy, erratic action in the water. Some baits like this one are silent, others are louder. Some dive a little deeper, some a little shallower. I prefer typically natural shad-looking patterns, and if the water has a stain, I'll go to one like this with a little shine, maybe some white, black chartreuse, something that stands out. There's also certain bodies of water I've had a ton of luck cranking with crawfish colored cranks. Again, I like multiple shapes, and kind of multiple shades if you can with your crawfish cranks. This one is a flat-sided. I have some that are more round. You see kind of the wiggle wart has blown up again, and especially the old ones, people are all over because they just kind of have that unique little action to them. If you can, grab a bait or two, go out, practice with them. It'll take some time. You'll probably be frustrated, but when you figure out kind of how to use the wind to your advantage, weather patterns, and you can find those depth changes, you can really nail some spring fish. And one of my favorite things to do is after a few warm days, you think the fish are moving up, and all of a sudden, bam, that first cold day comes. And if you're like me, it always seems to hit on the first free day you have to actually go fishing. And a lot of times it means the first couple hours of your day are going to be slow. I mean, even if you move out even a little deeper, let's say 15 to 20 feet, the fish can be tough to catch. But I find that as mid-afternoon comes around, a lot of time that sun comes back out, and even if the air temps aren't that warm, the sun's coming down. If you can find those key areas with chunk rock, even with gravel or clay, holds a lot of heat, funnel areas, wind-blown banks where those shad are, and it has a little extra warmth, those bass are going to get up around them, and you can go from skunked to a really nice stringer in no time at all. So I encourage you to get out, try some cranks, crank those medium depths, don't ignore them, put down the square bill, and I promise you'll have a lot of fun. Tight lines.